Tyrone Kane, like it finished 118 to 18 points for Kerry. What was your assessment of that game?
You'd wonder how, after 25 or 30 minutes. I mean, two totally different halves, and I think just looking at it from now, I think you have to give Kerry massive credit for the way that it turned in. There'll probably be a lot of focus on what Tyrone did wrong, and maybe rightly so. But Kerry, you know, they took the mistakes that they'd made in the first half and they rectified them very quickly. You know, they pressed right up, they abandoned the sweeper with. I mean, Paul Murphy had absolutely zero impact on the first half as the sweeper.
He was playing too far up, so
he wasn't.
He wanted to press Tyrone far out the field. That wasn't happening. The ball was just being kicked straight over his head, and Jason Foley was left to the wolves with
and maybe Kerry came thinking that Tyrone wouldn't be as direct, and thinking that they would run the ball a wee bit more. And obviously Paul Murphy's position is exactly what you said there. You know, he was playing almost on the 45. The ball was just flying over his head. He wasn't marking anybody, he wasn't cutting any ball out. Cahair McShane was in against Jason Foley and it was a one. So, you know, there was no point in Kerry having a sweeper at that stage. They either had to drop a man right back or press up as they did, and the position they were in at half time, they couldn't drop the man right back. They had to press up, and to be fair, it worked. You know, they got David Moore into the game. I thought Jack Sherwood made a right difference to them in terms of, you know, he gave them a wee bit of zip. You could see from the first 2 minutes of the second half there was a real zip about them that there hadn't been in the first half. They started to get Clifford on the ball where they needed him on the ball, and you know, I suppose the game was going to come down then to the goal, and they worked it brilliantly. You know, Stephen O'Brien turned the ball over in his own half, ended up finishing the ball at the other end. You know, he's just outstanding, and if he's out of the final now for 3 black cards.
Yeah, well, that would be massive, because he's probably been Kerry's player of the year. If you were to do a footballer of the year, the main man you'd be talking about from Kerry would be him, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, you know, I had an hour preview on Saturday, exactly that. You know, he was 10th on the list for an all-star with the forwards at the start of the weekend, and I felt that he was in footballer of the year form, you know, or very close to it. And again, you know, that second half, he's just talking here now, that second half from him today again was, you know, real, I suppose what Kerry need, because they are quite young, real leadership from him. You know, he started to do what he's been doing and drive straight at teams and punch holes.
And what do you think, like, actually no, first of all, that game, if that was against Dublin and Kerry left themselves that wide open, and are they tactically naive? And like Peter Keane, it's his first season at this level, whereas previously he was with the minors who were just like a mile ahead of everyone else they were playing. Is it taking him a while to get used to this tactically? Because Dublin would have had the game over at half time if you left yourself that open.
You would think so. The funny thing being that, you know, Dublin would never kick the ball now as much as Tyrone kicked it there in the first half. You know, Dublin have moved away and they do run the ball, but what they do is run the ball with the intention of creating that big gap down the middle to score goals in. And if Kerry are relying on every runner from deep being tracked and not having anybody in that hole, if they play like that in the All-Ireland final, you know, because even from a point of view of dealing with a running team, Paul Murphy was too far up the pitch. You know, because he'd have been meeting a runner who was coming with momentum past him, and Dublin would just score goals. You know, if they're going to play a deep lying player, he has to be another 10-15 yards back, regardless of whether it's the running game that they're protecting against or the kick, because Dublin will eat that up.
Do you feel like Tyrone didn't die with their boots on today? Because, you know, they were in a winning position. Was it 9-5 at half time?
Yeah,
I think
they were 9-6, I think, at half time, but they were 9-5 up at a stage.
Never, like you were saying throughout the game as we were watching it, that they waited until they were well behind and probably in a losing position before they actually started pressing up on the kickouts and putting Kerry under pressure.
The kick-out thing, like I said to you here after 5 minutes, you know, my worry for them, and at that stage, you know, even 15-20 minutes gone, we were starting to look towards Tyrone Dublin, you know, because Tyrone were in such command of the game. But the one concern I had at that point was that they weren't pressing up on the kick-out, and if you do that against Dublin, you know, they'll just overwhelm you. You know, you'll just get beaten, and that's just it. And they never did it. They never pushed up on the kick-out until after Kerry got their goal, at which point Tyrone were chasing the game, and there's a desperation about it. And it just seemed, you know, such a poor decision not to go after it. You know, when Kerry are not particularly strong on, you know, Shane Ryan is not going to cut you the way Stephen Cluxton or Rory Beggan. You know, Monaghan came here last year and Tyrone were brave and pushed right up on Rory Beggan, who was the all-star goalkeeper at that time, and they had a fair amount of joy off it. You know, there were times when they were left a wee bit bare and it was ropey, but the reward for doing it is sometimes counteracts the couple of scores that you might get caught for on the other side. And Tyrone never pushed up. They allowed Kerry free possession. They allowed them to build momentum in the game, and they paid the heavy. You even saw the last 10 minutes then when Tyrone actually pressed up, went after the ball, how much of Kerry's kick out they won. And that's something that, you go back to the Super 8s game in Dublin, in Omagh last year. They went after Stephen Cluxton's kick out in the last 10 minutes. They got all their joy pretty much in that game. The first 10 minutes of the All-Ireland final was about pressing up. They forced 2 mistakes out of Cluxton that usually don't have them, and they were 5-1 up on Dublin. And then, it's so much harder to defend when you drop off and give a team the ball. And I thought it was a real mistake from them to not, would Dublin ever have let a team out when they were 9-5 up? Would they have let a team come back and did?
You have full control over where every piece of your puzzle goes at that stage, and because your players are probably man on man, Tyrone are bigger players, probably more experienced, like their age profile is more mid-20s compared to the Kerry guys who seem a bit younger. Now you'd imagine they could hem them in and really physically sort of make them feel boxed in and under pressure, and you'd get a few scores out of that. Like, is Mickey Hart just a cautious coach who's trying to set up a team to not lose rather than going out there and attack the other team?
There's a theory, obviously that theory exists, and there's a theory also that, Tyrone individually, particularly in defence, aren't good enough to play man for man.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why Mickey Hart does it. I think they're a lot better now individually than they were 2 or 3 years ago. And part of that's the age profile and the conditioning work, and fellas just being physically stronger and more capable. I would like, if you were Ronan McNamee, to me, was an all-star form. Now, the day again, Clifford doesn't need space. Do you know what I mean? It's not like he ran riot against Ronan McNamee, but he just requires so little space off either foot that what did he end up with? 5-6 points there.
4 from play.
Yeah. So he made probably Ronan McNamee look worse when McNamee actually won a few of the exchanges as well. But I would fancy Rory Brennan on his own. I would fancy Michael Cassidy on his own. I would fancy, if Colin Cavan had the cover on his own, if they were caught one-on-one for spells. And that's what Dublin have done. That's what Mayo have. That part of why Mayo couldn't stay with Dublin last night was because they couldn't go 1-to-1 with them anymore. It required, their turnover rate in the first half was huge. I think it was 12 turnovers, and most of them in front of their own goal, an area they protected manfully. But that takes its toll on you in terms of the attacking side.
Especially when you've had very little break, like 7 games.
Exactly, and they just, Mayo couldn't sustain that momentum, and in previous years they could have went 1-to-1. They had Higgins, Boyle, all those fellas that could have, as I said, they could even foul the man. If you're caught one-on-one and all you have to do is stem the attack is foul them, they could have done that. Whereas Dublin are so powerful, some teams can't even foul them.
Yeah.
They just run through the tackle and then they score a goal. So I feel that Tyrone maybe don't take enough of a chance and trust in their defence can foul the man at least.
Just to talk about a couple of their very talented players and 2 talented left footers. Peter Hart, another massive game. Like, we've seen John Small shut him out of some big games against Dublin.
Yeah.
He was basically non-existent throughout this game. Tom O'Sullivan completely shut him down. And then Kieran McGeary, you said you did a piece in the Irish News there recently about how he wasn't having the greatest season. Like, we know he's very talented, and just making little mistakes, and his costly mistake allowed Kerry to counter and get the crucial goal as well. Like, so some of those key men just not really getting it done. And I don't know if that's just, is it bad luck, or these lads not quite up to this level? Is it just form? Is it, what is it?
If you're looking for a technician, if you're looking, you hand Peter Hart a football and tell him,
he'll make it talk to you.
To hit the black spot from 50 yards, he'll hit the black spot from 50 yards. His problem is, when in his earlier career, he probably, because of the way Tyrone played, and maybe teams didn't pick up on how central he was to them, he got running from deep and he got creating, and teams tried to pick him up as he came into the play. Whereas what you've seen with John Small and what you've seen today with Thomas Sullivan was the exact same. Teams, if the famous club manager phrase, if he goes to the toilet, you go to the toilet with him. And that's what teams have started to do with Peter Hart, and it's it's very, very hard because he doesn't get an awful lot. I find he doesn't get an awful lot of protection from referees. He would need to look. He doesn't do enough, I think, to buy that protection, if you know what I mean. He doesn't make. He's nearly too honest. He doesn't make enough of a meal of fellas wrestling at him and hauling at him off the ball, and then Thomas Sullivan just fronted him up and stayed with him everywhere he went today, and it just limits his impact on the game because he's a running player. He wants to come on the ball at pace and run at teams, and if you have somebody like that, and you have a John Small or a Thomas Sullivan who can match him for pace, match him for strength, his football can't show. His football doesn't show.
You have to find another way to get yourself in the game. Like, if you think of the league game between Tyrone and Dublin here in Croke Park earlier in the year, if I remember correctly, he went inside and he played in front of the goal, and he actually had a bit of an impact. Surely you think, let's mix it up a little bit.
They've tried that, to be fair. That was a bit of a theme last year, and even in the early part of this year, as you say. And
But if he's well up in the stand here with us, if they can't find a place for him to impact the game, well, what's the point?
It's even a way for him to impact. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. If Tyrone played with a traditional centre forward, somebody who held the line, got on the ball and kicked past the ball inside, Peter Hart could do it. Would allow him to do that ball, because he'd just be coming, taking a short ball and turning and kicking it, which is, it's the game that they want him and probably need him to play, the running, and that's what he struggles to get into. And I said before the All-Ireland final last year that he should play full forward, because there was one place where John Small couldn't get wrestling at him and fouling him, and they did try him in there briefly in the All-Ireland final. Now, to be fair to Small, he actually got a couple of great blocks on, a couple of great tackles in on him, but it has become a real theme of Tyrone's sort of lack of ability to break this ceiling. That's now, we're still going back to 2008 since their last win over Dublin Mayo or Kerry. That's a long time for a team that's been in All-Ireland semi-finals, been in All-Ireland finals. That's that run, and it just, again, I think we saw evidence today when Kerry pushed up, the Tyrone's running game just struggles here. Just struggles in Croke Park.
And of course, players like Paul Geaney stepped up 3 points from play. Paul Clifford, you mentioned already. Sean O'Shea probably shut down mostly by Conor Myler from play, but just hit some sumptuous frees. Whereas the likes of McShane missed a crucial one at a crucial period midway through the second half, and they had a glut of wides at the real wrong time that allowed Kerry back into it. But just a wider point then, 33,000 people today for an All-Ireland semi-final. It can't just be down to everyone being demoralised after Dublin hammering Mayo in the second half last night, because people had the whole week to buy tickets. But like 33,000 in an 82,000 seater stadium for an All-Ireland semi-final, and I mean it's just
would you
a
believe,
horrible situation really for the GA.
Would you believe that I actually just to see how long it would take, I went on to buy tickets for it, and it took 5.5 hours to get through the queue for a game where 33,000 people turned up. It's a really worrying situation, because Dublin's domination's well established at this stage, but it has got to the point where it has created such a malaise in the rest of the county. Like I was saying, we stopped in the Apple Green on the way down in the shop, and everybody you spoke to, it was just such a depressing narrative about coming here. It was like, it's been compared many times to watching a third place playoff, knock the head off and everything. You're comparing it to watching a third place playoff in a World Cup, and whether that is to be or not, we'll see from Kerry. I have my doubts that Kerry will really seriously trouble Dublin in the All-Ireland final.
Can't see it.
But 33,000, from a peak, like, it's not more than a decade, or a little more than a decade ago, we were filling this place for Ulster finals. We had to take Ulster finals to Croke Park because they couldn't cope with the crowd. Tyrone Armagh were in their pump at that time, and it was a massive thing. And obviously there's the recession and all of that, and it has caused a dip. But and again, like, it's how Croke Park react to this, because I think on the whole, attendance figures are going to be up a wee bit. If you add them all
up, they're going to the Super 8s.
Yeah, well, even from last year when the Super 8s existed, the average attendance is going to go up a wee tiny bit. Probably, the margin of that will be dented a bit by the day, and their expectation of how many would be here today. But so do they take because Croke Park have a tendency to just say, well, there's your overall figure, up, the crowds are up. And you take into account of that, 27,000 for Mayo and Donegal and Castlebar last week. There's still an appetite for football that's competitive. There's a huge appetite for football that's competitive, played in the competitive championship. I think the day was just the ultimate sign that people don't feel that this is a competitive championship. Neutrals don't feel it's a competitive championship, and ultimately they don't feel it's value for money because of that. You know, €50, which, I mean, I would argue that is too expensive. You can argue up and down on that and compare it to professional sports and whatever, but €50 for an uncompetitive championship might have been a competitive game, but in terms of where it leads you and in terms of the neutral coming, being attracted to drive to Dublin and watch it.
And a terrible spectacle, like in terms of, like, there was no atmosphere here. I mean, it was nearly as bad as Omagh last week with the Dublin B team against the Tyrone B team. So,
it felt like a National League final. It felt like a National League final. If not a National League final, maybe a semi-final. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was